Okay, well, welcome everybody to the final 2024 Women in Systems Thinking speaker series event with our speaker today, Janelle Orsi. Is it Orsi? Is that how you say your last name? Okay, great.
Yep.
So we're very glad that you've joined us live, and of course, happy to have you, future people viewing this video, joining us. Hello to you all. Um, so just to very briefly situate this conversation, I had a small nonprofit called Systems Thinking Marin a few years back, closed the doors to that. However, the initiative sort of fed into what we've been calling the system of systems thinkers, which is how I met Carrie Norton and Carolina, who Carolina is not with us today because she is in a very inconvenient time zone to make it. So hello, Carolina, and thank you for all of your help setting up this event, setting out the emails and all of that. We miss you. And this is our final conversation, as I mentioned, for 2024. We're in the planning stages for 2025. Who knows what's going to happen? You never know. But we're really happy to have Janelle with us today. And so I'm actually not sure if I hand it over to you, Carrie, to say a few words before I hand it to Janelle.
Yeah, I'm just going to invite us into a short grounding exercise so that we can all arrive in the space. So, welcome everyone. We're really glad you're here. And we are the system of systems thinkers, and that's myself and Felicia and Carolina, who's not with us today because she's in Japan asleep. But the three of us have been practicing together as trying to figure out and trying to invite greater collaboration in the systems thinking field, namely. And then as part of that expression, we have created this space for these dialogues, these women in systems thinking dialogues, which I want to just invite you, if you haven't been able to view those live, some of you I recognize for sure, but we have recorded them all, and it's just been, I call it the treasure trove because all the women who have participated have been really influential in the systems thinking field and really inspired us to think in new ways. So we invite you to really enjoy that recorded content on our website. But for now, let's just arrive in this space. And I'm going to invite you, if you wish, to turn off your camera and close your eyes. What I'm really going to encourage for us to think about is something drew you to this conversation today, maybe several things, maybe this question around money, maybe this invitation into a dialogue with women's voices. Whatever it was that drew you in, I would like you to reflect for just a moment, and I'll stop talking in a second for about a minute. How would you like to feel when you come out of this conversation today? How would you like to feel? So maybe let's just all reflect on that for about a moment, and then we'll come back into the space and begin. I'd like to invite everybody to come back on camera if you wish and rejoin the room. And so I'm going to hand this off to Janelle in a moment, but just to say we're thrilled to have Janelle here. today. Her work is profound and and also her work is I'll call it revolutionary. Um, So I'm not going to say much more about Janelle. You can read her bio on our website, and maybe you did when you registered, but we don't typically spend a lot of time reading people's bios because we're going to get right into the experience with Janelle, and she is going to really bring us right into the experience. But we're just thrilled to have you here, Janelle. Thanks so much for making time, and we're really excited about this experience. Take it away.
Thank you so much. I'm really delighted to be here with you all. I'm going to share a bit about my journey, the twists and turns of my work in the past roughly 17 years since I've become a lawyer, um, and some of the surprises that I've encountered along the way, particularly as it relates to finance, which is the topic today. And let me just get this up. So my organization is Sustainable Economies Law Center. I co-founded it 15 years ago with Jenny Casson, who also does a lot of work in finance. Some of you may have heard of her. This slideshow, by the way, I'm going to drop a link to it, or someone else can drop a link to it in the chat because it's full of links. There's probably about 250 links in the slideshow of just resources galore. And this is a link to a gallery of what Sustainable Economies Law Center does. But in brief, we're an organization of about 19 staff, and we are basically trying to provide legal support and create policies and to bring about more sustainable localized economies, particularly through democratic structures. So we work a lot with worker collectives, we work a lot with community land trusts and housing cooperatives. And we've just done a range of projects related to sustainable food systems, energy cooperatives. There's a lot there. That's why we kind of created a gallery of our work. But one of the most popular areas of our work has been finance. And sorry, I'm going to pull up the chat. I don't know if I should pay attention to it or not. Oh, I see someone's taking notes. Thanks, Slow, and good to see you again. I feel like we met each other a long time ago. All right, so I'll ignore the chat if that's what we're doing in the chat. Okay. So, yeah, finance was one of our most popular areas of work. And this is a very busy slide. And it's a slide I used to feel really proud of because I would talk about all the different things the Law Center was doing to build what I called a quote unquote ecosystem for financially resilient communities. And on one side, we were trying to figure out how do we unlock all of this wealth that's held in things like retirement savings and foundation endowments? How do we unlock that and get it to flow into community funds that would then channel it to things like local real estate cooperatives and energy cooperatives? And we were just working on projects all over this so-called ecosystem to try to create that flow. And one of the pinnacles of this work was in 2019 with an organization called Lift Economy. We co-founded The Next Egg, which a lot of people loved this project because what we were doing was helping people set up retirement savings accounts and then use that to invest in things like local cooperatives. So basically giving people checkbook control over their retirement savings. And it was a lot of fun. I learned a lot about retirement savings, and I just kept learning more and more about finance and the law. And at some point, about 3 years ago, started to kind of get this uh-oh feeling. And this is a project, this is probably more than anything else in my career. My work adapts and evolves a lot as I go, but with this one, I just took a 180 turn and I said, no, go back the other way. Cancel what we said. This is not a good idea. And a lot of that was having learned a lot about the law of retirement savings and coming to feel like retirement savings vehicles are really traps. They're going to really narrowly confine what's possible in the world. And so I've written a lot about that. I'm going to maybe talk a little bit about it later, but there's a link here to an article I wrote, Retirement Plans Are Deadly Traps. But yeah, after creating this project, getting a lot of people involved, it's an online network. You can still join it. It still exists. It's about 350 people who are trying to do something different with their retirement savings. I basically said, no, this was a bad idea. I think this is harmful. And I'm a people pleaser. So this was not a fun experience for me to suddenly say, nah, we got to do something different, because a lot of people were unhappy with me. A lot of people who have built their careers on promoting things like sustainable finance, regenerative finance, were pretty unhappy with that change. So, but yeah, more so than being a people pleaser, I really do care about the earth and trying to create a more loving and cooperative world. So I was like, okay, what's wrong here? And one of the things I noticed was that in all of this work, the metaphors we were using were often very mechanistic. We were always thinking about plumbing. So we'll just kind of create pipes that channel the funding into pools or tanks of pooled funds. And then that'll go into local communities, and then it'll get piped back to the people who invested. And it was all very, machine-like. And I was like, well, there's not a lot of nature metaphors showing up in this finance work. So that was something I noted. And I just started to read a lot more on the side, just books that started to expand my mind. And these are some of the books that have been most influential for me. They're not all directly about systems thinking, but I think they all bring a strong systems thinking lens. And I just started to feel like, wow, I really love the work that we've been doing at the Law Center, but I think it's replicating this mechanistic, reductionistic worldview and just making it a little nicer around the edges. And I started to look at a lot of what we were doing, and I created a collection of cartoon videos. I'm a cartoonist, by the way. Cartoon videos and essays, and it's called Patches of Aliveness. And so you can go in here and click and check this out. But basically, this was 2 years ago. I wrote this and shared it with the world, and was saying I'm really rethinking a lot of what I've been doing. And then I took a 6-month sabbatical. And on that sabbatical, I just happened to travel to a lot of places where people don't accumulate wealth. They don't save money. That's not how communities thrive. I was in Indonesia, especially in West Sumatra. I was in Ecuador and the Amazon. I was in Kenya. And I was just kind of soaking up, how do other people live when they're not striving to accumulate savings and invest it? But here are all these people, they're thriving. And what are the systems? What are the flows? What are the relationships that enable them to thrive? I was just kind of soaking it in. And after that 6-month sabbatical, I came back and I said, I really need to change my work. I more or less have now stepped back from Sustainable Economies Law Center. I work there now only 10 hours a week. And the two things that I do there are supporting land and housing projects, specifically ones that are either led by Indigenous communities or by groups that center the sacred or spirituality, because they're often the groups that are willing to get outside of the mechanistic worldview and lean a lot more into this web of interdependence. So those are groups that I do consultations with now, helping shape, law and legal compliance around what is sacred to them. And then the other area of work I do is supporting wealth redistribution, particularly in the form of gifts. So not so much financial finance and securities law anymore, but just trying to figure out, how do we get wealth to flow? How do we unlock pools of funds that are currently being hoarded? So that's now my work. But overall, I'm in a period right now where I'm stepping back and learning a lot. I do a lot of reading and a lot of writing. And that's part of why this conversation was intriguing to me. I thought, wouldn't it be fun to sit with a bunch of systems thinkers and imagine what else is possible? And I wanted to go ahead and invite us into conversations with each other, even before I share more about what I learned about finance. I will share more, but this is a really fun prompt that I enjoy just thinking about and imagining, which is, imagine that just somehow saving money became impossible. It becomes impossible. Maybe there's a giant computer virus that obliterates everybody's savings, and it just, I don't know, for whatever reason, saving money just becomes impossible. What would we do to make sure that everyone's needs are met? So this is what I'm going to ask people to talk about in breakout groups for about 20 minutes, and just think about, what would your life look like? What would your everyday life, how would it change? What new relationships would be forming in your communities? How would new channels of communication form? What are the things we would now have to learn about that might be different than what we have been learning about. And, you can expand the realm of questions and considerations as far as you would want to go. But yeah, I mean, I was lucky to be in a lot of communities around the world where people do thrive without saving money. So I know it's possible. I also know that about half the people in the US don't have savings. And so this feels to me like a really worthy thing for us to start imagining. And then maybe we can come back afterwards and talk about why might it actually be a necessity to imagine this. But yeah, it's kind of a beautiful thing. So I just want to go ahead and invite people into the breakouts, and I can copy and paste the prompt into the chat just so that it's there before you get into the breakout.
Yeah, I'll also try to put it in the chat to the breakouts. So
Oh,
I'm
okay.
going to open the breakout rooms if we're ready, Janelle.
Yeah, let me just hit enter on the, okay, there's the prompt, so it'll be fresh in your chat. Yeah.
I wonder if anyone has any questions before we transition. Okay.
Okay, here we go. 20 minutes.
See you soon. Enjoy. Welcome back, everyone. We're looking forward to, hearing some of what you encountered in your experiences, and I'm going to hand it back to Janelle to take us through this next set of steps. Yeah.
Thank you. It's striking actually coming back, just seeing a lot of smiles on people's faces. I was feeling very happy just during and just at the very end of my breakout conversation, just because I was learning from people and getting ideas. This is a topic I think about a lot, but it's not for me to figure out, it's for us to figure out. And that was just affirmed for me. Anyways, but yeah, I don't know, maybe the smiles indicate that you all are falling in love with this imagined world already. I don't know, or or maybe these are uncomfortable smiles like, oh gosh, this is a scary imagined world. But yeah, I would love to hear what came up in the conversations. Feel free to not spotlight me. It'd be nice to be able to see other people who want to speak up. But yeah, what came up in your conversations? What was this world that you were imagining? Or maybe some of you are already living it. How did you feel about it? Was it scary? Did you fall in love with it? Yeah, just anything that people want to share. Yeah, slow.
I'll share. This is a theme. One of the things that we touched on so many things, and we were in a fluid space of resonance, so which is really great. But one thing that occurred to me was that those three questions speak to sort of in a root cause thinking what needs to happen, and I think for me a fundamental individual level shift in our consciousness that because we are truly a part of nature and we are really one with everything at a deeply spiritual level, the idea of separateness is what causes fear, but that fear leads to all of our subsequent societal structures of need for safety and security outside of what we all need to thrive. And so there's no argument that we all need something to thrive and flourish and self-express and self-transcend like Maslow. But at the same time, we do need to have this individual shift, and it's happening. But it's slow, and I think that the practical problems are associated with how do we live with, quote, enough savings for that ability to thrive and continue, especially if you don't have any. It's a real challenge, but some of those things were what we talked about, and we talked about much more. Thank you.
Thank you for sharing that. And yeah, it makes me think, yeah, one of the things maybe we all need to lean into are just practices that help us, that remind us of our interconnectedness, because the fear does come from that sense of separation. It's deeply ingrained in a lot of us because of our culture, but how can we keep practicing and practicing to understand that differently? Yeah, what else? I think Slow, you were about to share. Go ahead.
Yeah, we were in the same group, and it was great. We also touched on sufficiency and enoughness uh, uh, as a thing, but we spent time on introductions and sharing some of our thoughts, which was great. I wish we spent even more time digging into the exercise, but we did some. It was a lot of fun for me because I'm in a really good position for that kind of scene, living in a town that is not a huge city, so we might not see total chaos. We have a long-time relationship with the CSA, Community Supported Agriculture. So my first thought was, oh, we could be a conduit from, the city to them. What support do they need? Where can we find land where they can grow more food? Blah, 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 blah. At some point later, I realized, oh, wow, it is partly just a transportation issue. There will still be a lot of food in California. We're actually in a really good position, assuming there's a way to logistically get the trade going again quickly or whatever. If that's needed, then we might be able to help make that happen. But that's a larger, I thought about the immediate local first, so CSAs, local intentional communities, the local emergency, preparation networks with the city and so on, neighborhood association. And then what was fun was I realized while I was talking it out, oh, somewhere in there, if things were still kind of falling apart or challenging, I would want to reach out about internet. I know local internet tech people, and there's government fiber lines running down every train line and whatever, and it's just jurisdictional reasons that stop people from tapping in and running fiber lines down every street, and it costs some money, but not that much. So anyway, there's a ton of resources that people would desperately need, like food and communications, and beyond the immediate needs of the house, which I also then started, that would be a whole fun thing, just as a household, what would we need? But my mind went to, we're in a great position to help. And it's fun to start thinking out some of the emergency networks. And then, yeah, they lend themselves to wow, a lot of stuff could just be organized by us reaching out and working together that way, maybe.
I love it. This is a fun design challenge. I could see how your mind just starts to explode and a web of connections are forming across Oregon and California. And yeah.
It validates the work we've been doing. We've been developing community accountability work in our community, which led organically to starting we're having our second meeting next week of a community of accountability group across communities in the area. We're reading a book called Fumbling Towards Repair. I can't recommend it enough. And it's just, Mariam Kaba and I forget the co-author, but so yeah, I just feel that, and I brought that up too because I was like, we would build on that, work on that network. That's one of several ways we're already connected to other communities, intentional communities in town.
Sweet, thank you. Yeah, who else would like to share what came up in your imaginations? Yeah, Natalie.
Hi, thank you very much. I really loved our little group, Joe and Antoinette and myself. And so many things about centering the sacred. I walk a druid path. Well, I'm trying to in this structure and scene. It's very hard, but about being sacredly connecting with nature. And from that, I was talking about the interplay of gifts and needs in nature that's done without any need for kind of money, this kind of symbiotic and natural exchange, and how having needs, I think, often in our kind of Western societies is something that's been really kind of judged as something quite denigrated. Needy, as not being good. We need to be this kind of autonomous, forever coping kind of individual person, and if we have needs, that's not a good thing, and there might be something to be taken advantage of, or we might have less worth in our society if we have needs or needy. But actually in other languages, this is something much more neutrally done, like you need to go to the toilet, it's just a need, it's not anything that is judged in the same kind of way. And kind of Antoinette was talking about how well, you could say it probably better than I could yourself, and please do, you know, when she visited a particular place in South Africa, and how she noticed the vendors were working with each other and referring people around each other in order to get the thing that was needed, and this kind of idea of offering your gifts in a way that fits the needs. So you have this kind of exchange. And we talked about money not being based on gold, and it's just this strange belief system that's gone, in my work, a bit bonkers. But I think what became centered was the importance of relationship. Particularly Joe kind of said to me, yeah, what happens if, you know, if you break your arm, you need to know who to go to, who can set your arm, you know, when you've got no money, and you need to I said something about, you know, you can't bank on money anymore, so you need to bank on relationships. So trusting and trusted relationships become absolutely central to survival in a way that they're not right now, because we live in such an atomized world, especially post-COVID. So there was loads and loads more. And sorry if I haven't done justice to some of the stuff that we said. Please chime in from the group. But it was very refreshing to be here.
Oh, I'm loving this. So you want to build on that often?
Oh, I was going to say, Dr. Kemp, you did an excellent job of giving the overview of the sentiment that we all felt.
That's great. I particularly like what you were just saying about, you know, the tendency to feel some like a shame about being needy. And one of the things that's inspired me the most, I think I read this in Jeremy Lent's book, The Web of Meaning, is understanding that if a cell in our body needs more oxygen, which is a good, you know, thing, you know, cells have needs, we want them to have needs and to express it, that cell will start putting out a chemical that indicates that it's low on oxygen. And over here is a blood vessel that receives that chemical and is like, uh-oh, let's just start growing in that direction. It starts producing cells in the direction of that cell so that it can have oxygen. That's why we survive, is because of our cells' ability to express their needs without shame. It's not like, excuse me, but could you maybe help me with a little oxygen? Is not, you know, no shame whatsoever. And so I was really inspired by my conversation. I was with Ashley and Tyler was talking about the putting a lot of making a lot of commitment into nonviolent communication and realizing how important that is, and learning to express our needs, learning to express even our disappointment or grief when our needs aren't met. And there's a whole, you know, range of possibilities that we need to learn how to navigate together. And that this is one of the skills that we can really focus on building, is just communication and kind, sensitive communication is what we were talking about. Yeah, so that was sweet. Do others want to share?
I'll chime in briefly. I was in a group with Carrie, our default group. And so two things. One, when Slow was talking, I realized we had only talked about individual savings. We hadn't talked about community or, you know, organization, company savings, government saving. You know, we hadn't thought about like the larger organizations and their quote unquote savings. So that was interesting to start to think about. And then also, I think the thing I kept coming back to was just the psychological, emotional sort of bandwidth of the 50% of us who don't have like a lot of savings, as opposed to the 50% of us, or none, who do, and whatever amount that might be $1,000, or it might be like $100 million. I just lost my train of thought. Let me rewind. It's like there's a psychological, emotional bandwidth taken up if you're striving toward it, but also if you're trying to manage it. And so it's like that amount of bandwidth, it just kind of poof goes away in this magical scenario. And I think that for those people who don't have savings, that striving toward and our kind of, you know, human animalistic optimism that we can get there, and not only that, but we should. It's amazing how much space that actually takes up.
It's huge. It could totally transform our lives. That this one small change of thinking, no, actually, I won't save money. it changes so much about our lives, what we strive for, how we feel about ourselves. And also share, personally, I never had savings until I was 38 years old. I had a lot of credit card debt, actually, because some of the wild and whimsical things I've done in my adult life, like start Sustainable Economies Law Center, involved a lot of risk, and I worked up a lot of debt, and I had law school debt too. So it was finally I paid it off when I was 38. And then because I had a salary from Sustainable Economies Law Center, I started to accumulate savings. And then I was like, oh, now I'm an adult and I guess I'm saving money. How much should I save? And that was an impossible question to answer. And it started to just feel icky, almost like every month, how much of this should I save? How much should I give away or spend? It was like, I wasn't used to answering that question for myself, and it didn't feel good. So I think after accumulating about $20,000, I just started giving it away. And now I just keep, when money comes to me, I keep pushing it away from me because I am surrounded by people who need it so much more immediately than I do. And there are people that I love, people I've been in long-term relationship with, building community and doing activism for the last 20 years. So of course, it just feels like a no-brainer to give it to them. So now I've made a commitment to not saving money, and it's truly liberating. It does mean that I have to think about, well, now how do I create a world that'll support somebody who doesn't save money? And I feel like I'm in very good company with most people not being able to save money, and also most of the world, most people, especially Indigenous people in the world, not thriving on individual accumulation. So it doesn't feel that scary, but it has gotten me a lot more oriented toward what are the relationships I want to build? What are the skills I want to build? And I'll just say I'm so much happier. So yeah, it sounds like this group is feeling a little bit of that joy as you start to think about what could that feel like. So yeah, thanks for all these resources being shared in the chat. Yeah, maybe I'll just invite one or two more shares because this is a great conversation. I could return to talking a little bit more about what I've learned along the way, but yeah, anybody else want to share? Yeah, Tyler.
That reminded me, this theme of how much space it opens up. Bitcoin is at its all-time high right now. And for years I was deep in the crypto world, and was trying to put my money there instead of normal retirement accounts or things like that. And the emotional kind of roller coaster of being in that world and all these ideas of like, am I going to become a millionaire tomorrow? Or am I going to lose all my money tomorrow? And seeing my dad make a lot of wealth very quickly in Bitcoin, and then it collapsed very quickly. Like it's such a ride. And given the commitments I've made now and my orientation towards not saving for retirement, it's just like, I don't care. None of it matters. I still have like a tiny bit, and if it gets more than I need, cool. Like I'll give it away. And so the spaciousness and the joy and the lack of anxiety in me following the news, is something I want to celebrate. Yeah.
I love that. Thank you. Anybody else?
I'll share. Our group talked about how not having savings would require us to get to know our neighbors, everybody in our immediate area. I think it would require that things become more localized. It would require us to have a better relationship with the land, because I think the land would start to be like our savings in a way. It would be the thing that we have to know, like, how much can we take before it's too much? How long do we have to keep this area untouched? How do we grow our own food? Stuff like that. And I think there is fear that, at least for me, I don't think I expressed this in the group, but like collapse is already happening. And yeah, I think there is a fear that with not everyone being on the same page about this kind of stuff, that we need to rely on each other, that there's going to be like a big social collapse as well. And that's really scary. But I think like before then, we were talking about how it's necessary now to really put in the work to get closer to people around us and really support them in ways that aren't just financial, like to give our time, to give our energy into those relationships. And one of the things that we want to learn, because that was one of your questions, what do we want to learn about? I responded with governance, like how do we organize ourselves on a local level? How do we share space with one another? How do we get people out of their houses and into common space to figure these things out together? But I definitely miss stuff. So if other people from my group want to share, I'll stop talking now.
Thank you so much for that. That's beautiful. Yeah, Tracy.
I can't find the raise hand today on my app, so I'm sorry.
You did a good impersonation.
I'm so grateful to be with you all, and thank you, Janelle. I've long wanted to meet you, and you too, Carrie. I think we're connected on LinkedIn for a long time. I put some things in the chat because I could go long and monopolize, and I don't want to do that. However, I did want to pick up off where Karen left us and speak a little bit to what she laid out, in that I do think there is an urgent need for a bit of an orchestration to make sure we can help people that need help and reach people that need to be reached. And I like to talk about it in terms of a movement, and I typically refer to it as bioregionalism, which is definitely something that's happening around the planet. And I think the biggest, the easiest opportunity I think that we could all embrace is what a lot of people have already touched on, which is growing food together. I've long been out in the Bay Area championing the notion of programmatic edible front yard gardens between curb and sidewalk as a mechanism to integrate high school gardening program and allow residents to participate or not, but the notion of kind of returning to that village life where there is an opportunity to grow, harvest, and kind of break bread together. And with that action over time, I think humans would grow wisdom and compassion and also come back to our body. And when you think about, somatic healing, really get out of our heads into our body, and then we would start to feel better and start to work together collectively and avoid some of the worst parts of the collapse. And anyway, I've thought a lot more, but I do want to say that I hear the fear and the loneliness. I'm a mom of a 19 and 14-year-old. I'm a single mom. I have no savings. I have no money actually because of a divorce situation. So I have experienced an incredible amount of transformation from the lack of financial security and choosing not to let that define me, but rather let that fuel me, and to let go and say, I don't know if tomorrow somebody's going to knock on my door and want something from me that I can't give because of my financial situation, but I'm going to care for my kids and go about my day and do good things. And anyway, I'm going to shut up because, like I said, I go long. But bioregionalism and growing food, I think, is a good elixir.
I love it. Thank you all. I feel like this conversation could basically go on for the rest of our lives. I will share that I created more wait, did I share the wrong? And where are my slides? Here they are. You know, what I had planned to do was give a little more background about how I even came to this question as feeling like as a necessary question of what would we do in a world without savings. But honestly, it's kind of a depressing presentation because it's really about how I see our financial system as being completely broken and irreparable. And I've made a lot of cartoon videos to that effect. They're linked. There's links to these videos in this slideshow. So I actually don't think I want to spend a whole lot of time on this, but I will share for a few minutes and then we can go back to dialogue. Or I don't know if Carrie, if you wanted to, as facilitator, take the lead on any questions. But yeah, I'll just share very briefly, and it gives you a tour of these slides too, because like I said, they're full of resources. But I guess just in brief is that trying to understand what finance was, I even went to the Oxford English Dictionary, and I've really come to think of finance as it's a system of separation, measurement, and control. It confines the vast and infinite realm of possibilities of what can happen in the world by saying now there is a legal obligation that limits a person's freedom, or it limits the freedom of land or an ecosystem in a way that basically requires it to produce a financial return. It requires that it produce money. And some of the earliest definitions of finance in the dictionary kind of relate to slavery and making people buy their freedom by paying ransom. And it really does feel like, in terms of systems thinking, the vast realm of possibilities gets cut out, and finance is just sort of a way of channeling the possibilities in our lives. But there's also a lot that I've done just to think about, is it even possible to invest our money and get it back with a return without causing harm? And I've looked at it every which way, and I'm not gonna, this will be the part that I cut short because I've written about it. There's also a resource in here called, it's a sample board resolution for abolishing investments. So it's for foundations that want to stop investing and stop earning a return, for example. But I kind of feel at this point, if we're not repairing the harm, then we're just allowing the existing harms to be perpetuated. And so if our money is not being used in ways that are repairing harm, then we're just causing harm. It's the way I've come to think about it. So I'm going to just skip over some slides. Even organizations that I've helped to co-found, like East Bay Permanent Real Estate Cooperative, which is one of my favorite organizations. Thanks for the snaps there. So they accept investments and from people all over the community. And I helped them do a public offering so they can sell shares in many states. And this is so that they can purchase real estate in Oakland and surrounding areas and provide low-cost housing and commercial real estate to the community. But even so, I feel like even though people can now invest in this cooperative and earn a small return, it's about 1.5% per year, which is far, far better than any other kind of financial instrument. I still feel like we're not actually repairing the harms of slavery, genocide, redlining. We're not actually repairing the harms. We're just causing less harm than we were causing before, is how I've come to see it. And so I've come to feel that we really just need to be making gifts where wealth has accumulated unfairly. It really just needs to go back into the flow. And then there's a video I made called The Nightmare Machine of Money Justice, which talks about everything I learned about finance laws and securities laws and why it basically to me feels like a trap. I used to think, oh, all we have to do is learn how to comply with these laws and then we can unlock the flows of money. But no, I think we really step into a trap anytime we try to basically comply with these laws. And at the end of the day, it's basically policing and violence that backs our financial system. And so if you lend money to people for land and they don't pay it back, it's ultimately the court system and then our policing system that will remove people from the land. And this is usually happening in ways that we're not seeing. We're putting our money onto Wall Street and other investment vehicles, but people's wages are being garnished. People are being forced off of land. And so there's a sort of a remote violence that's being perpetrated with our money and we're just not seeing it. But yeah, overall, I've just, come to question, do we even want or need savings? And if half the people in our country don't even have savings, maybe we should start building our society around that half, around like what will help that half of society thrive. And I just, I think about most people's savings it's not just a benign pile of money sitting in the corner somewhere. It's in this system of extraction, particularly fossil fuel extraction. So how can anyone's savings, even if you have savings, how can you even think you're still going to have it? How is this not going to collapse? So, and yeah, I think Felicia brought this up, something more or less to the effect of, what is this doing to our lives? What's it doing to our souls to be spending so much of our energy trying to accumulate, feeling like we need to accumulate? And I just see infinite possibilities emerge. And I say, I think we're going to be falling in love all the time. I feel like I was just even falling in love with some of the pictures you all were painting, edible food and sidewalk strips, just like, oh, all of the new relationships we'll be building are little moments of like new love in our lives. And so I use these egg cartoons a lot, by the way, as the nest egg. But basically our nest egg is going to be more of a system of flow. And what would we be pouring our time and energy into if we weren't trying to accumulate it and hold on to it, but rather just activate systems of flow all around us, flow away from us, flow toward us? I just think our time and our days would be so different. And so this is my last slide of things that I've just been personally thinking about. In my breakout group, we were talking about forming groups of people who commit to not saving money. So I've committed to not saving money. I do want to join with other people who've made that commitment, and just start figuring out more things together. And I've also made a commitment, I don't know if I could stick to this, but of never paying rent. So currently I stay with my dad, but I'm a semi-nomadic. I stay with various people, and I let people experience the gift of hosting me. And it frees up my income because I still have some income from Sustainable Economies Law Center. It still frees up that income for me to give it away. And I've been learning about monasticism. There's a whole tradition in our society of people who renounce accumulation and put their trust in collective structures. And then I'm also thinking about larger scale systems. What might we need to create guaranteed income programs, guaranteed work programs, public benefits programs that could be a lot better structured right now. I look at any public benefit program that exists and it all disincentivizes generosity and giving. So we need to change that. And we need to figure out how to hospice out Wall Street. Like, how do we take that whole institution and hospice it out? So these are a lot of the things that I'm thinking about. I don't have the answers, but I will say I really enjoy thinking about it, and I'm really enjoying the energy of this conversation and all of your thoughts on it. So, lastly, because you have the slides, there's blue slides at the end that's just resources. Lots of cartoon videos. These are my 4 most recent videos that kind of represent where I'm going with my work right now. These are some of my videos about the problems of the financial system. But lots of resources here about how to get wealth to flow, and a lot on redistributing land, sharing land. And there's a whole lot of old resources on retirement savings. I don't endorse them so much anymore, but they're there. And just miscellaneous other things. So enjoy those. And I'll pass it to you, Carrie, as facilitator, if you would like to share thoughts about where to take the conversation for the last bit of time.
Thank you so much, Janelle, and thank you everyone for all the wonderful sharing. We could go in a lot of different directions, and I have a million questions, but I guess one maybe more, I don't know, maybe this is not the most exciting question, but I am curious is how do you see these transitions that you've been making, these relinquishments that you've been making, these renouncements. Yeah, I mean, it sounds like they've been liberating, and I'm just wondering, how are they informing where your work is taking you and the scale at which you want to work? I mean, it just sounds like you've talked about the very personal to the very institutional. And so, and one of the things that we, of course, talk about in the systems world is, what are those levers? What are the points in the system that have, sort of outsized impact? And so I'm just wondering if you've thought much about, like, okay, well, of all the ways I could spend my time now that I have, I have liberated myself, what are the things that are the most impactful? I wonder how you think about that.
I think the thing giving me the most hope right now, and that I'm putting a lot of my time into, is there are land projects sprouting up all over the
Mhm.
US and beyond. Many of them are indigenous groups who are getting their land back. Most of the groups I work with are not formal tribes, recognized tribes, but indigenous-led nonprofit organizations. And they're just trying to create space for living a new and ancient ways of being together. And so in the last year, I've given legal support to 36 of those groups, and they keep coming out of the woodwork. And
Mhm.
I would say, like, 10 years ago, if they had been coming out of the woodwork, it would have been mind-blowing. But now it feels like a groundswell. It feels like there are groups of people all over who are saying, we need to come together as a community. We need land. We need to take care of land. We need to take care of each other. And particularly not in the same old transactional mindsets that we used to. So my early work as a lawyer, I supported a lot of co-housing communities, which sounds like a form of sharing, but really it's a form of fractionalizing housing into little individually owned bits,
Mm.
in ways that reinforce individual ownership. And so the groups that I've been working with, because they either come from indigenous perspectives, or they might come from spiritual communities, they're thinking beyond this kind of individual ownership paradigm. And I love it. And what it means is they are finding incredibly creative ways to be in relationship with each other. Like, when I hear about, okay, when you have a problem, how do you solve the problem? And I just hear about, like, circles that they form, or just ways of being in dialogue with each other. And it's just so beautiful. To me, it's sacred. And doing the legal work to support that is such an honor right now. And I try to do it in the way that is least disruptive of that sacred work. But yeah, I think land-based groups who are sort of coming into collective stewardship with each other is basically where I see the most hope. And that's where I'm putting a lot of my time.
So amazing.
Mm.
How fortunate for them, and sounds like for you too. I'm reminded, just by what you're sharing, of a thought that Felicia and I had in our little conversation about, okay, I said, I could swear that I heard Yuval Noah Harari, who's just got a new book out, talk about the fact that humans are the most cooperative species biologically. And we were having a discussion about that, because I might have misheard him, or maybe it's not true. But either way, like, this idea of cooperation and interdependence that I know we all, like, intellectually probably appreciate and want to fall in love with, in practice, it turns out to be, like, I don't know. Anyway, my personal feeling is that it's a little bit tricky, and it's a little bit hard, and it's a little, and our media is suggesting that it's virtually impossible for us to get along and feel interdependent. Of course, I don't, I'm trying not to pay too much attention to that, but I'm just wondering, like, do you have, are there stories in your portfolio of, like, experiences you've had where the cooperation is really challenging, or where you've run into obstacles? And what would you say to us about that?
Where is it not challenging? It's challenging. I did go through a little bit of a crisis around 2012 of having supported so many communities and cooperatives to come together, and helping so many of them fall apart, that I did start to lose a little bit of my faith that it was possible. But, I started reading a lot of books about communication and governance and realized, we can do this. But we humans, we are deeply wounded in so many ways. Our culture has really wounded us. And so, yeah, we keep traumatizing and re-traumatizing each other, and it's hard. But I will say the thing that's given me the most hope has really been my personal learning about myself. So about 6 years ago, I set it to be my life goal to become ever more loving. That's a longer story, but I thought, what does it mean to become ever more loving? It's not to go out and get a new skill of being loving. It's just to slowly identify and remove the blockages. Because what I find, and I do a lot of meditation now, is that when I kind of start to clear all these silly thoughts in my head, the fearful thoughts, the thoughts of who is Janelle Orsi? What self should I present to the world? Like, once all those thoughts start to fall away, then it's just love. And if you do this for yourself, you will experience this is sort of an intuitive, intrinsic flow of love and appreciation for all that is around you. And once I saw that in me, I was like, well, if this is in me, it's probably in everyone. And that's when I just started to believe, no, we are innately loving. It makes us want to cooperate. So underneath all these layers of trauma and drama that we have, I do believe we can do this. And so, yeah, that's how I've sort of personally come to that faith for myself.
Amazing. All right. Well, I could follow up on that, but I see that Mary has a contribution she wants to make. So I'd like to invite you in, Mary.
Thank you. Yeah, it's a question to just back up to what you were sharing previously about working with Indigenous organizations and land back initiatives, or I'm not quite sure, but I would love to hear a little bit more about it, and particularly like what is it that they're asking of you? Like what because I as I hear it, it's a shift from there's like we're doing something, we have like a tradition, we're drawing on something, it might be new in some ways, but it's also ancient in other ways. But then what is the maybe logistical, or why are they reaching out to a lawyer or a finance lawyer, and what role do you see in that?
Yeah. Yeah. So imagine a group of people gets land, whether they're Indigenous or not. And they're like, we have land now. We can grow food. We can live here. We can have community events here. The imaginations go wild. And then the planning department shows up and says, sorry, you can't have community gatherings here. And then there's people living there. And the rent adjustment program says you need to register because you have tenants, right? And there's all these different laws that basically try to put what they're doing into boxes and categories. They might be required to get licenses for certain things they're doing. Should they even have written lease agreements with the people who live there? Or does that actually sort of sour or have a chilling effect on the warmth of the relationships or the fluidity of the relationships? And then there's a lot of sticky stuff to navigate around. Well, should we try to protect renters' rights? And how do we relate to all that? So it's really, people, most of my clients, the more beautiful and inspiring they are to me, the harder it is to fit them into the legal boxes. So, and I'm just like, okay, I'm sort of a bridge between these two worlds, trying to say, here's where you might want to squeeze yourself into a box, and here's maybe how you can liberate yourself from it. So it's very creative work and kind of surreal sometimes.
Wow. Oh, I was going to say, I mean, to that end, do you find yourself innovating? I mean, it seems like it would be inevitable that you're innovating the law in more biomimetic ways.
Yeah. If you watch the 4 cartoons that are on the first blue slide in there, that'll talk about some of the innovations. I don't know if I would say innovations, but for example, I'm forming more churches than I used to for Indigenous groups, because churches are far less regulated than other kinds of nonprofit organizations. I'm doing things like helping groups adopt statements. If they're going to not use written lease agreements or contractual agreements with the people living on the land, like how can they adopt a statement that explains this to the tax assessor, to other agencies that are going to. And so we're definitely always creating things that feel different and new to me. Yeah, so we keep pushing the boundaries is what we're doing.
Well, so what about this idea of like, again, I just want to hit on this cooperation thing again for a minute, because just being in myself, but I imagine others are in this too, or this question of like, how do we be loving enough to live in ways that are truly interdependent and cooperative? Like I could imagine, for example, my mom, you know, we visit her quite a bit because she's aging, and you know, like she really doesn't want us around all the time. I imagine if we, you know, we've thought about moving in with her to take care for her, but I don't think she's really into that idea. So, or example, like I had a friend here. I mean, she likes to come and stay from time to time. And like, would I be comfortable if she was staying here all the time? I don't know. You know, so like there are these real like points of friction that I think, you know, I'm answering my own question right now, because I can say, well, if you're just more loving, then you know you're not going to feel that way. Is that really the idea? That you just get more comfortable with dissolving boundaries?
In a way, maybe ironically, you get more comfortable with setting boundaries.
Okay.
You know, it's always a balance, right? You know, we can't just be wide open and say, I'm never going to save money. I'm just going to be open to anyone and everyone. I think there is actually something very powerful about knowing who is our family, who are the ones that we love, who are the people for whom we want to concentrate our most loving, caring energy, and to be able to say no so that we can be of meaningful service to the people around us. But yeah, I'm influenced quite a bit by Taoism, of just sort of knowing, yeah, there's got to be some balance in here.
Yes. Uh-huh. Okay, great. I thought somebody else had a question, or no?
Yeah, so I haven't
Um,
kept up with the chat, but I did just save the chat, and I know we're getting toward time, so I'll also put my email address in if people want to stay in touch.
yeah, we're down to our last 5, but this has been an incredible and generative and generous space. I wonder if anybody has comments to share or questions to ask of Janelle as we kind of move towards the close. Okay, Slow, please.
Yeah, I feel incredibly fortunate I came on. I see these calls and I'm like, I should go to every single one, but I don't make many. But I'm really glad I made this one, because I thought I was going to get an update on your current work in the world of finance law, and this is profound. Tom Atlee, who I work with at the Co-Intelligence Institute and who you met at the same time on the way to this conference in Portland. Thanks for the ride again. And he read Hospicing Modernity recently, and to me, it's funny because his work has included all of the same things in some form or another, you know, for a long time. And we've talked about each piece, but it has hit him in a way that he is having to wrestle with it, you know, more deeply than he has before. So I heard a resonance in your being like, oh, wow, this whole system, no, got to step outside of it altogether. So I applaud your courage to do that, and a lot of it, and in all this, you know, specific ways you're doing it. So my question is like, are you? It was going to be, do you have? But it's like, are you even looking for like a next thing, or is the new center? There is no center. Yeah, something like that.
Well, Sustainable Economies Law Center continues to do a lot of its work that it's been doing. And I've kind of cut myself loose quite a bit. And I'm giving myself 2 years. I do feel like there's just so much I need to learn. And I'm doing a lot of writing, and I don't know what the next thing is, but I want to, before I dive in and start doing, because I'm good at doing things. Before I dive in and start doing that, I really want to learn. So that's where I'm at. And that's why I'm really also grateful for this conversation.
All right, well, my mindfulness bell just dung. So thanks everybody once again for attending. Lovely to see you all again and or for the first time. Thank you so much again, Janelle, for joining us and sharing your depth and breadth of thinking in this way it is confronting, it's challenging. I think, you know, we definitely have fear, if not even a little bit of panic, come up with this topic. So once again, we refer you to the website that we've posted in the chat a few times to see the past events and where we will post the recording of this event. We'll also send the recording of this event out to those of you who have registered. And stay tuned. If you're not already on our mailing list, you can let us know you want to be added, and we'll send you any updates about potential future speaker series in 2025. And I think that's all.
Thank you. This made me really happy. Really appreciate you all. Thank you so much for organizing, Carrie and Felicia.
Thank you so much. And thanks everyone for participating. And Janelle, yeah, just thanks for loving us toward a future that we can imagine without savings. Take care, everybody. Have a great day. Ciao.